right. Welcome in, welcome in. We're going to get ready to get started very soon. All right, welcome y'all. I'm just going to play some music as we wait for folks to join us.
They treat us like animals. This ain't a circus. This isn't laughable. We don't deserve this. This ain't on the media. This ain't on the news. No one believing us. But this is the truth. This is the truth. And then this is reality. This is the truth. And then this is a tragedy. Taking the children away from the family. Why is this happening? It's a catastrophe. Stop with the vanity. Where is humanity? We are the refugees. We are in agony. We've been the ones that been taking your salary. We are the hard workers. We are the farm workers. We are the dishwashers. Yeah, we are the ones. Yeah, we are the ones. Yeah, we are the hard workers. We are the lawnmowers. We are the leaf blowers. Yeah, we are the ones. Yeah, we are the ones. Yeah, we are the ones that are working construction. And we are the ones that will fix your destruction. And we are the ones that bring fruit on your table. And we are the ones that been given a label. And we are the ones that you blame it for taking your just what you pay me. We are the ones working minimum wages. And we are the ones with our kids in the cages.
All right, welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. Thank you for joining us at USF School of Education Center for Humanizing Education and Research, also known as CHER. And as a second offering in our Cultivating Hope Through Precarity speaker series, we bring together these incredible scholar activists across diverse traditions to contextualize the current xenophobic militarization of communities in North America, and to just share lessons from resistance efforts that can lay some foundations for a future without borders. So if you are able to, please share your name, your pronouns, what land you're joining us from, what roles you play in education. Are you a student with us? Are you a K-12 teacher? Are you a school administrator? Are you a teacher educator? Whoever you are, we welcome you and thank you for being here. Tonight, we will be in dialogue featuring Harsha Walia, author of Border and Rule, Global Migration, Capitalism, and the Rise of Racist Nationalism. Also with Bill Ong Hing, professor of law and migration studies and the founder of the Immigration and Deportation Defense Clinic at the University of San Francisco, and also the author of Humanizing Immigration, How to Transform Our Racist and Unjust System, and beloved Lorena Melgarejo, the co-director and organizer at Faith in Action Bay Area, Local Rapid Response and Mutual Aid Network. My name is Dr. Farima Pour Khorshid. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a first-generation associate professor of teacher education at the University of San Francisco, and I'm also an affiliated faculty member with the Center for Humanizing Education and Research. What we do at CHER is we promote the generation, application, and diffusion of high quality methodologically rigorous research that is conducted in solidarity with local and global communities to address pressing issues through humanizing frameworks. Our center strives to increase institutional and collective capacity to impact public consciousness, policy, and practice in order to build stronger movements towards justice. And so now I would love to pass it over to my beloved colleague, Dr. Belinda Hernandez-Arriaga, to lead us in a land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Farima, and welcome everyone that's here today. It really means a lot to us, and we want to start by honoring the land, our history, resistance, and the ongoing struggle for justice. We begin by acknowledging that we all gather here on unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land that was never freely given, but instead taken through the violent processes of settler colonialism. This country, as we know it, was built on the attempted erasure of indigenous nations through genocide, forced displacement, reservations, and policies designed to break people apart. That legacy is not a distant past. It is a reality that continues to shape our present. As children of immigrants, we recognize that the United States is a nation constructed through migration, labor, and the dreams of people who cross borders, often fleeing conditions created or worsened by U.S. policy. Yet, even as immigrants help build this country, they have been exploited, criminalized, and marginalized generation after generation. This contradiction is a truth we refuse to look away from. In naming this, we align ourselves in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, queer, immigrant, and Latino communities and all communities of color whose lives continue to be shaped by ongoing oppression and structural violence. The struggle for dignity is not symbolic. It is lived every day in the streets, in workplaces, in detention centers, across farmlands, and within the systems that police our bodies and our existence. Tonight, we come together in the spirit of truth, telling, and collective care. We honor those we have lost, those whose lives were stolen by colonialism, racism, xenophobia, and anti immigrant violence. We honor those whose stories were cut short and those who continue to carry the fight forward. And we honor our responsibility to uplift our communities, to protect our families, and to build a world where migration is not criminalized but understood as a fundamental human right. This gathering tonight is more than a presentation, it is a commitment, a vow, a declaration that the struggle for liberation is ongoing and that we stand together, rooted in history, united in resistance, and moving forward with purpose, solidarity, and love for the people.
Thank you so much, Belinda. We continue to honor the Indigenous unceded land that we are each joining from. And also wanted to share that if you are interested in following some of the events that we've done in the past, we've had really powerful conversations with some of our comrades and friends that you can actually access at our website. Someone will be sharing that in the chat now. Our intention with these events and with these conversations is to demystify what do we mean by humanizing education and research, especially as we continue to face such dehumanizing attacks on education today. In fact, over the past few years, See Her has also organized a series of internal projects, which ended up culminating in our collective book project called Crafting Home Place in the Academic Borderlands, Humanizing Education, Research, and Relationships, where Dr. Kuhn, Dr. Philixen, and Emma Fuentes were co-editors and authors, and both Belinda and I were contributors to this book as well as many other colleagues from USF School of Education. So to check out our book, please look at the link that's shared in the chat. And, you know, we're committed to continuing to build with you all. So our conversation today is just another humble offering to create more pockets of possibility for radical reimagining, freedom dreaming, and healing together. So if you're interested in following our work, definitely check out our website, but we also have an Instagram account. It's at humanizing_education. So please check us out. So as we get ready to move into this very important conversation, just a bit of housekeeping. Please use the Q&A feature in the Zoom to pose any questions throughout the event. You can use the chat feature to connect with our community, of course, in humanizing ways. You can also click on the button Show Captions in your Zoom toolbar if you want to use closed captioning to see the words that are being spoken. And you can use the Padlet link to capture any important takeaways, to share resources and tools. And you can also comment and like posts. So please check out those links that are being shared in the chat. So, without further ado, we are going to move into this conversation. Unfortunately, Harsha Walia notified us a few hours ago that she can no longer join us due to some unforeseen circumstances. And so we decided not to cancel the event, but we still wanted to honor her work on this very important topic. And so we're going to be sharing a few clips of her speaking actually to the questions that we are posing in this conversation. And so, just to give you a heads up as we move into this conversation with Harsha Walia in spirit and through clips, but also with Bill Ong Hing and Lorena Melgarejo. Just want to let you know that the arc of this conversation is going to begin with contextualizing the past, where we've been as it concerns to the history of borders and beyond. And then we're going to move into the present to really think about how we're building on the legacies of the past today. And then lastly, we're going to be thinking about the future and what this moment illuminates for us about the need and the possibility for a future without borders. All right. So, why don't we get started? Our first question was really about contextualizing this moment in the longer arc of colonialism, imperialism, and borders. And so, I am going to share this 7-minute clip from an interview with Harsha Walia about her book, Border and Rule, which was held just this summer in Imagen Ensayo Collective in Barcelona, Spain. And so to access this video in its entirety, you actually can access it in the Padlet. We included it in our resources. All right, so I'll go ahead and share some of her words now.
Why is the border regime, or why are borders useful to understand the socio-political context that we live in, or the world, in broad terms? And in your book, or Border and Rule, you talk about like the border is not only a territorial space, or it's not a physical space. And if you could just extend on that.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that question. I think for me, I think of borders in the way that you described, as a border, not as the line on the map, but as bordering regimes that can proliferate inside and outside the border. And also as regimes that are much beyond the issue of migrants, because often we think of borders as only impacting migrants, immigrants, refugees, whatever state category. But for me, at its core, borders are ultimately about maintaining global apartheid. So in the so-called, we don't live in a post-colonial world. We live in a very much still colonial world in terms of the continuities of empire. And at its most fundamental level, borders basically maintain the idea of who has the right to live and where and under what conditions. So to me, the idea of border is critical to understanding global apartheid, racial capitalism, and colonialism, because it very clearly continues to ensure that there is entire parts of the world that can be subjected to extraction, exploitation, oppression, and premature death. And that's basically what the border does at a global level. And then, of course, we see that bordering regimes proliferate even within nation states. So, even if you are someone who has crossed a border and you become a migrant, you can still be hunted down by border guards. The state apparatus does not, quote unquote, protect you. In many cases, for example, where I live in Canada, the state apparatus is actually the care arm of the state when it comes to migrants is actually the carceral arm of the state, because you go to the hospital and a healthcare worker will report you to a border guard, for example, or the teacher will report you to the border guards. So there is no difference for migrants when it comes to the so-called care state and the carceral state in the welfare state, So the border is constantly in people's lives, even if they have crossed the border. And I think the last thing that I would offer is, thinking about bordering regimes and not just the issue of migration, is we can start to see how borders again, impact not only migrants, So I start the book by actually talking about gentrification, because for me, gentrification is a form of bordering. It's the same idea of controlling and containing and criminalizing the very same populations that migrants represent, right? The so-called threat, the internal black and brown, low-income, racialized underclass that has to be contained and criminalized. So for me, bordering regimes are the global system of apartheid that maintains a global underclass of exploited and criminalized people.
Can you just extend a little bit, because of our context, the term racial capitalism is not so old, we would say. So if you could just extend a little bit to explain that.
Yeah. So racial capitalism, the way that I understand it, is the gift of the Black radical tradition, both coming from South African theorists and US Black theorists, US-based Black theorizing, and the Black radical tradition that really says that there can be that racism is built up through capitalism, and that capitalism requires racism, because part of what capitalism requires is the constant segmentation of labor, right? Capitalism requires communities to constantly be divided in order to continuously produce more and more categories and classes of workers. And so racial capitalism is this really core idea that there can be no capitalism that is non-racist. Capitalism requires racial differentiation, and in different contexts that may look slightly different, but basically capitalism as an economic system requires segmentation of labor. And race is a critical way in which classes are segmented. And so for me, the border is a critical method of racial capitalism, because the border is actually the political system that produces race. Because the idea of who is the other is often completely based on who belongs where, who is the racial other, right? So you're not from Spain, you're from somewhere else. That idea, citizenship, is a key way of thinking about race, because we know that citizenship is, race doesn't look at citizenship. Someone could be 3 generations living in a place, but they're not considered from that place, right? So citizenship and race work to displace people, and capitalism exploits that, because then capitalism is the method through which migrants are continuously exploited, particularly as a labor underclass throughout Europe, throughout North America, and really throughout the world. So for me, the border is a key pillar of racial capitalism, because oftentimes we think of migration just as a issue of racial xenophobia. It's just about kick them out of the country, they're not from here. But I think often what we miss is that these countries don't actually want all migrants to be deported. The far right xenophobia is to actually create precarity, because countries like the United States, not just the United States, but for example the US, the far right xenophobia, we know that the US has the carceral and surveillance power to actually deport all migrants if they wanted to. They could easily track and deport all migrants, but they don't, because we know that the entire economy, especially the cheapened labor, relies on migrants. So capitalism relies on the border to produce this precarity, so that when migrants are exploited in the farms, in the fields, in the illegal gray economy, that precarity maintains the colonial empire, it maintains the colonial economy, while also ensuring that migrants are always considered from somewhere else, so their underclass status can be justified for.
All right. Thank you, Harsha, Walia in spirit, for contextualizing this moment as we're thinking about colonialism, imperialism, and borders historically. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point. And now I want to move into a conversation with you, Bill, as we're now starting to think about how to contextualize this moment in the longer arc of US immigration policy historically. Like, what is the same and what is different about the current xenophobic violence that we're seeing?
Well, let me pick up a little bit on what Harsha so eloquently said.
Do.
Obviously, she's correct, um, and it's hard to dispute her framework, and the framework does explain historically the various efforts. Some of this is a cliche, but the various efforts to exclude different groups, beginning with the Chinese and other Asians, and then eventually even Eastern and Southern Europeans, and all the while uh, what she depicts as the racial xenophobia and the she doesn't say love-hate relationship, but I do, that it's kind of a love-hate relationship between low-wage workers, especially with respect to the global South in our own hemisphere, and that historically has been Mexico, and now in recent years it's other Central Americans, and so yeah, I mean there's clear patterns historically of of the racial undertones to immigration laws and what I just outlined. What I would add to her commentary, however, and that's represent what I'm about to say is represented by folks like you, Dr. Prima, and Belinda, and Lorena in her day-to-day work, is that this the the manifestation of racial hatred and capitalism and the attempt to deport people that exists, but we exist too, and we have always existed. There have always been voices and activists to battle against this the manifestation of what she's labeling racial xenophobia and racial capitalism, and so um, the fact that it's rather ironic, right? That when was that filmed? How many months ago?
That was just this summer in July.
Yeah, it's rather ironic that she said, and I wrote down her quote, that we could, or nations could, deport all migrants if it wanted to, but it doesn't want, uh, and it's actually kind of clear that there is somebody sitting in the White House right now, and it's not just Donald Trump, but it's his buddy Stephen Miller, who would like to deport all migrants, right? And they're doing their best effort to do that. So they're not actually listening very closely to even their Republican allies that they need the labor, and so they're, although for some stupid reason today he was defending H-1Bs, Donald Trump, but that doesn't help us in terms of who we're helping. But let me just stop there.
Also, just for our listeners, can you let folks know what H-1B is?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so H-1B are the high-tech workers principally, although they can be kind of any job that requires a college degree. But here in Northern California, the H-1Bs are used primarily by Silicon Valley folks and big companies. And there's been attacks on H-1Bs in the last few months, and it's hypocritic. It's crazy. Their administration is divided over H-1Bs. One doesn't want H-1Bs, but he does. Trump does want H-1Bs, and Elon Musk wanted H-1Bs, but Stephen Bannon doesn't want H-1Bs. So I can't keep track of them, but they're high tech kind of workers, and the most recent proposal was that they would tax them $100,000 per application. Um, but that's beside the point. The point, and I'll stop here, is that yeah, it goes on and on, but what we should not forget, and I'm repeating myself, is that we're here, and our job is to stop the the evolution towards total deportation. That's not going to happen. Not on our watch.
Before we move forward to Bill, I just want to ask, even just the example that you just provided for us, can you think of examples historically of where you saw some of these like nuances around which immigrants are considered more desirable to stay in our country
Oh,
historically?
it begins with the founders. Okay. So George Washington gave these grandiose speeches about welcoming all migrants and refugees and that kind of stuff. But Benjamin Franklin was not open to he was critical that German students were speaking German in public schools. And so he was the first, Benjamin Franklin was the first English only guy. Okay. And so, and then in the, gosh, I mean, just pick any era, right? The Chinese exclusion era ended because of a war. It ended because of World War II. That that Japan was was leafleting China with leaflets to say you're stupid to be an ally of the United States because the ally is excluding your people. So guess what? The United States found out about that, and so they passed legislation in 1942 to end the Chinese Exclusion Act. Okay, um, and so and then Harry Truman actually vetoed the 1952 law because it did not get rid of something called a national origins quota system that favored Western Europeans. He actually vetoed that, and he wanted there to be a broader system of immigration, and it didn't become more broad until John Kennedy was elected, and he introduced legislation. And after he was assassinated, Lyndon Johnson got it passed, which at least got rid of the national origins quota system. And so there have been champions of more open migration, but but students of immigration history know that even what I just said, that the 1965 law was open the door to many more immigrants. It also slashed the number of visas for Mexicans, okay, for the first time in decades. And so, um, like I said, that there's always love hate, and there's always more open folks than others.
Thank you so much, Bill, for contextualizing that and just, I mean, even just moving now into the present, just to be thinking about who's considered worthy of being here and not, and why, and how it's always rooted in what Harsha was lifting up, which is the racial capitalism and the goals of white supremacists benefits, right? So I want to move us into the present. So I'm actually going to pass this over now to Belinda to lead us into thinking about where are we now? Belinda?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Bill. And Lorena, we're really happy to have you here. You're just a guerrera of force on the ground. You every day are getting out there to be accompanying, defending, and advocating. So, can you contextualize this moment in the longer arc of spirituality, religiosity, and justice in the past, and how you see faith groups building on these legacies and accompaniment today?
Yeah, thank you, Belinda. Thank you for the invitation to be here. That question, I think, is so important, both in what Bill said, that we have always been here, um, and the land acknowledgement. Starting from there, right? I'm originally from Paraguay, from South America, and my practice, my spiritual practice, is actually the native practice of the Amazonian region, which is very much alive, just like the spiritual movements here that you see in the what the powwows have become over the years to reassert the fact that it's in the present, it's not a past tense. In terms of other faith traditions and beliefs that have come to this country through colonization, right? We have seen folks, like Bill said, there's always been folks who have been standing up and saying, this is not right, this is not what it should be. And we've seen it in other parts of the world with Did Not Han, opposing the Vietnam War and actually creating a monks of resistance, right? Like, this is what embodying your religious, whatever path is, into the present, into the now, not something that is saved for Sundays or Saturdays or whenever people worship, but is a way of living. And for us in the work that I do every day, our organization is called Faith in Action Bay Area. We work in San Mateo and San Francisco, and we don't necessarily organize the kind of like the clergy or the the people who embody the big church or congregation with big C, but the people who want to live into their faith. And those are regular, everyday people. And they definitely know what that's like. And both some signs of hope is so easy right now in a time of darkness to just like give in to hopelessness, and you click in your phone and it's a new disaster coming our way every day. And it's been like that. It's not new. It's just, sometimes it affects you more. But what I'd like to f- point us towards is the light that people are becoming, because in times of darkness, every little candle is light, is big, and is what are you gonna do now? Who are we gonna become in this moment, rather than just what we're gonna do? And just for San Mateo County, right, a little bit south of San Francisco, within a few months, we have been able to get over 1,000 US born citizens from all walks of lives. They come from congregations, they come from neighborhoods, they come from different little groups, from a lot of teachers. 1,000 of them have gone through training to become verifiers in every single city. They can verify rumors within 5 minutes everywhere. In a county where we have 23 cities, we have people locked in into this, in addition to doing the accompaniment that we talked about to the immigration appointments, not just the courts, but the ICE check-ins, the ISAP, the interviews, whatever it is. um, there are two parts to that. There is the 300 or so folks who are doing the accompaniment at 7 in the morning. At 6:30 they have to stand there to meet a stranger. But the other side is the fact that immigrants themselves are connected to one another and are trusting enough to then ask for help. Because what fear does normally is makes us, it actually isolates us. That is the tendency. We feel afraid, we become ashamed of this whole narrative around worthiness, and like it's our fault, so we don't ask for help, and then we disappear. So the fact that people are calling us and asking complete strangers to do basically a blind date in front of ICE, so that they're not going to be alone, that in itself to me is a miracle in the doing. Miracles don't happen, they don't come like from the sky. They're actually handmade by regular people. And I think that's actually the faith practice, the knowing that the great spirit, God, whatever people call it, is acting through us to live into this larger belief system that we have, that we actually are one, we are brothers and sisters. And we can live into this new kind of radical kinship, that where even a stranger becomes what you would do for your sister or your brother. And that gives me hope. The fact that in the last 2 months we've had literally 1,300 immigrants, mostly undocumented people, have little house meetings to talk to one another in a time that they don't want to go to the park with the kids. They've met, they invited their friends, their neighbors, and they organize this whole thing so that they can create space to talk about what they're afraid of, ground into what gives them strength. And I will tell you, 100% of the time when we ask that question, where do you draw your strength, people talk about God, people talk about their belief system. And I think that that's where you can build from. And that's than the conversation they've had, then what do we want to do together now? And they have given us a pretty clear sense of what the direction is, in spite of what, the systems that be are going to say of what's possible or not possible. People are creating this root system underneath that creates this new way of becoming. And that's where I find hope. And it's always been there. That's why we exist. People that look like me should not be here after 500 years of colonization. We should have disappeared. But the reason why we continue to exist is because those kinds of connections continue to, it's not a service thing or somebody doing for somebody else, but it's how do we interlink and actually create the kind of world we want to see. And that's what faith is to move forward in spite of everything that is stacked up against us.
Lorena, I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Because this is what we need right now in this moment. You've inspired a movement with faith in action, and you've inspired for folks to rise up and given space for that. And I see it in my own backyard here with even my neighbor who's a faith in action under your wing. I see it everywhere from SF down, but also, as you're saying, those milagros, it's coming from the people. That hope is coming from the community. So thank you for elevating that so beautifully here and really helping us to pause and think about these movements that is being created by the community and that there is hope during this time, right? And so, Bill, I wanted to kind of shift to you to ask what is working and new in legal advocacy that are seeds of hope as you see it?
Well, I have to confess that the rather I will talk about seeds of hope, but I want to tell you about the seeds of action. Okay, and
Yes, we'll
the
take
seeds
it.
of action are the commitment that Lorena and her team have, because their job is so difficult. Okay, I can't imagine, Lorena, what your typical day is and what your typical day is, because you described a bit of it when you said 7 a.m. in the morning, but I also know it's 9 p.m. on Sunday night too, okay? Because I'm on the receiving end of some of those signal messages. Um, and uh, how should I answer your question, Belinda? There is so much work to be done. And I don't want to use words that sound complimentary toward the administration, because they don't deserve any kind of positive credit. But the onslaught has been day in, day out. And, Lorena and I are talking principally about one or two aspects where people are walking in for their ICE check-ins and getting arrested, or going to the court and getting arrested. I mean, that's one aspect. And then day to day, ICE, a lot of people in the public thought ICE wasn't going to come anymore because of the billionaires calling Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago. But ICE was already here, okay? And
Yeah.
and every day they're arresting people more than ever. And so uh, the the seeds of hope are that attorneys are working hard, they're learning new skills. They're one is an obvious one, and it's a technical thing. It's uh, immigration attorneys have not been trained to do writs of habeas corpus, which is emergency going to federal district court to get people out of detention. And now there's all kinds of training to do that, and we're recruiting non-immigration attorneys to help with that, and people are stepping up. And last night I was in an event where I talked to potentially 12 volunteer attorneys who know nothing about immigration law, but they want to help. Um, and so uh, I guess that's my main answer to your question is that between my students who are fabulous and I'm working them night and day also, and Lorena's team that is working night and day, and these new volunteers, I see a lot of hope, and let me just hope in the legal community, okay, and the service community. But then I know you didn't ask me this, but man, when those pictures of No King's Day, we need that. I'm looking for a photograph in my office. I'll get it when I'm not talking. You know how the freeway was shut down in 2006 on May 1st, all over the Bay Area and Manhattan, and somebody sent me a photograph that I'll show in a minute of the freeway being 101 being shut down out of San Jose in 2006. Well, I mean, No King's Day is like that. You know, we
Yeah.
need attention to be shown, and the election results last Tuesday, um, I don't know how much we can read into it, but at least it wasn't the opposite, you know. It
Mhm.
was progressive voters showed up, and because we have to overthrow. I shouldn't use a word like that. We have to constitutionally displace the the current administration and the current leaders.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill. And honestly, I can't think of a better person to be in our corner of every day, being able to like see you mobilizing and championing the legal community to stand against, to fight, to get up again, to go. You've really championed that. And together, with Lorena, every day in action, 24 hours a day, and I think that what you share with us, it's the base of it, of this all is people power, that we have to continue to mobilize, that we can't be frozen in fear, even though we also have to acknowledge the mental health toll that this is taking on people, the emotional toll, but at the same time, like using our power to come together. And I love the way you said, Lorena, like this underground tunnel, right? When you think about movements in the past, and how they mobilized underground, but it was that underground that became the force. And so, for those of you that are watching, I just want to explain a little bit about the rapid response line. Faith in action, when you all hear about the red cards and calling, and if you see ICE, it is Lorena's team that is answering those calls. And it is Lorena that, is there monitoring all the different communities across the Bay Area that's, trying to navigate ICE sightings and be accompanying and be there and intervene. So thank you, Lorena, for doing this. And as you both shared, it's the community volunteers that have risen up to the occasion to be trained, to be on the ground, with their energy and faith practices and determination to create this movement. So I just want to, say thank you so much for capturing that glimmer of hope that is existing in darkness, because we got to go back to history and look at all the movements before that, have gone through really challenging times and how they've risen up. And you both are examples of that. So I will turn it over to Farima to talk about the future.
Thank you, Belinda. And I think, Bill, you walked away to go get that picture. Am I correct? You got to make sure we highlight that. Beautiful.
I love that.
Thank you
So
so much.
it's dated May 1st, 2006, and it's from San Jose. I mean, I can't. I'm forgetting her name. I think it's Christiana Castellanos, who work in Santa Clara County, and she sent me. It's my favorite picture. It's of shutting down the freeway, uh, in the San Jose area. So yeah, that's
That's
what we ought to do.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, as you all were talking, it just makes me think about how all hands are on deck right now. I think about so many educators who are developing protocols of what to do if ICE comes on campus. How do we protect our children? How do we put our bodies on the line? There's folks gathering to, support our neighbors, getting them groceries to eliminate risk, right? Everybody has a role. And it's been beautiful. And I think hopeful to see how folks are coming together in whatever capacity that they can. So thank you for highlighting that. So we're going to move into the future. So also just shout out to everyone who's been capturing some quotes and ideas and takeaways in the Padlet. I was just glancing at some of those things. And so thank you for capturing that in the Padlet. So now we're going to move into what does this moment illuminate for us about the need and the possibility of a future without borders? Like, what does it actually look like in practice? And we're going to ask all of you, but we're going to start with Harsha Walia's response. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And again, just as a reminder, this clip, this 7-minute clip, is actually from an interview with Harsha Walia about her book, Border and Rule, that happened in July of this summer to Imagen Ensayo Collective in Barcelona, Spain. And the full video is in our Padlet. So we're going to go ahead and start with Harsha.
Then for me, when I think of no borders and no border practices that push against the nation state, I'm thinking not only of migrant justice struggles, but I'm also thinking of many and all struggles against bordering. So for me, the horizons are multiple, and there's so many. I think about all of the different struggles against gentrification, for example, against policing, against criminalization. For me, those are struggles against bordering regimes that refuse carceral containment. And really, the border is about containing people and containing people's ungovernability and irregularity. And core to that is, of course, the capture of blackness, right? The capture of blackness is what forms the core of migration control. It's the core of policing. It's the core of prisons. All of that is about the idea of containing and criminalizing particularly blackness. And again, 1492, right? And so for me, any and all struggles that refuse capture, that refuse containment, that claim space, right? So whether that's refusing to be pushed out of your homes by gentrifiers, whether it's refusing to be pushed out of your homes by occupiers, the Palestinian resistance, whether it's people who are engaging in land-based practices around the world in the midst of climate catastrophe, people who are continuing to steward their lands literally all across the planet and are refusing, from Brazil's MST to, farmers alliances in Sudan, to farmers in Punjab, where I'm from. Those land-based practices that refuse multinational corporation capture of the land, indigenous resistance that continues to steward our entire ecosystems, literally the actual irregular movement of people, despite the fact that billions and billions of euros and dollars are going into trying to make sure people don't cross borders, but people still cross borders. The ungovernability of that, to me, all of these are incredible political horizons. And, maybe one moment of this internationalism was when the Madeleine was breaking the siege on Gaza and found itself, literally was confronted with the violence of the Mediterranean, and came across the boat in the Mediterranean, right? So that, to me, those moments, I know it did not end in a good way, like both for the Madeleine and the migrants who were taken by Frontex. But I think those encounters, increasingly in a highly militarized and carceral space, even as we face more and more surveillance, our movements are in conversation with each other and are in solidarity with each other because we are facing the same violences and we are facing the same structures of control. And so to me, those are horizons, because those are ways in which we think about many liberated futures, and also that these liberated futures are inherently connected, right? We cannot imagine a world without borders if there is still extraction and there is still occupation. So for me, there's something incredible about that, because on the one hand, it's overwhelming, like everything has to change. But on the other hand, no matter how local or how globally you are acting, and we are acting, we're actually all working towards the same liberated future, and that it looks like many different things. It doesn't look like a singular thing. So I actually think there's a beauty and a necessity to the politics of ungovernability and pushing in every way, and for, especially transfeminism, right? Like refusing binaries, like all of these methods and practices of being are just, to me, so critical in not just imagining a future, but practicing a present abolitionist imagination.
I will share something with you that I wrote
Yeah,
that
I would love
everything
to.
you said resonated so much, but me and Tiasha was one of the core people of TikTok. We wrote something about these kinds of spaces because we were, well, the three of us, we were kind of fed up with the question that I often get, because I often give slightly more uplifting kind of like conversations, because I'm in an education context, so I have to be a little bit more toned down. And then people always ask me, what can I do? And I hate that question. I really hate that question. So it kind of like, that question turned into, you should never ask, what can I do? I think that's false. Like, you should never. But I think you should ask what is being done, like what is already being done. And then we kind of like took this as an example, and some other collectives that support migrants along migration routes that we know. So in Greece, the reason is it's all solidarity work. You can be criminalized for things like giving water to people. Like driving somebody from here to here after they've crossed the border constitutes trafficking now.
Wow.
Like
crossing the Spanish border to the French border constitutes trafficking. So it's like Schengen is like, I don't know,
so with the people, and that's deliberate, right? Like the use of the word trafficking is deliberate, so that when you incarcerate these people who are actually doing solidarity work,
they become traffickers.
or they're just practicing being human. In very simple terms, is to share some food with somebody you meet.
It's not even mutual aid. Everything's become mutual aid now because it's all criminalized.
So I think I want to despair, but we can't.
We can't. It's true. We can't.
I mean, the last question, we had a little bit this sensation like, we're going to ask the thing that nobody likes to answer, because it's like, if we knew the answer, nobody would be here sitting on a couch like, thinking, like we would be living in another world. But we thought that we had to, also because we have a context in which anti-racism, it's been a little bit contaminated by identity politics, and we knew that the answer was going to be a broad answer, as in we're going to be organizing in different kind of spheres that do not necessarily have to do with who you are or who you are racially, whatever. So thanks for the answer.
And I mean, I think it's because I live in New Zealand, but I've been here on sabbatical. And that is a phenomenon everywhere, right? Like I know, because I'm German, I'm kind of like semi-attached to here. So I'm like, this is not uniquely Spanish or German or North American or New Zealand. Like this idea, there's something that happened, I think, very deliberately, though, and it's capture. Right? Like I think it's a form of capturing movements. And that happens in a variety of ways. Like I think like the NGOization was one of those things, but I also think the bastardization, because I still hold on to like parts of identity politics the way they were articulated, not the way they, not the parody that they turned into.
The actual,
and that's everywhere.
Totally.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you, Harsha, even though you couldn't be with us in person today. But I'm now going to move to Lorena Melgarejo. So what does this moment illuminate for us about the need and the possibility of a future without borders? What would it look like in practice?
I have to confess that it's hard to do a lot of imagining right now. And and that's on purpose, right? Like they put you up against the wall, and all you can imagine is like creating a little space to breathe. Um, when I practice jujitsu, and when somebody's on top of you, and it's like here, all you're trying to do is just push back so you can breathe, and you can't think about the next move. And at the same time, um, it is important to continue to ask that question constantly every morning, because that's what, in a sense, what utopia is for, is so that we're always walking forward. It allows us to continue to walk towards the horizon. The moment you walk a little bit closer, it moves far, but you keep walking. And the fact that so many people right now are even asking the question, what can I do? It doesn't matter. How can I join in? How can I help? It is an opportunity for us to actually not just make it a one-off, but it needs to be connected. It needs to become these nodes that continue to grow. The danger is to be in reactivity mode and only sort of utilize the people that want to help right now to do the thing that needs to be done, and then we're not building for anything. There is no future in that. If we actually want to live into radical kinship, then this is the moment to build it. The fact is, in this country, this is not new. This is a moment, is new in some ways, and at the same time, I'm not from here, but I know there is 2 million people incarcerated in this country, and it's normal. And there's nobody asking what can I do today about that. It's become, the narrative is that that's okay. So the fact that there are so many people rising up, the No King's Day all over the nation, in different states, with the elections that happened in New York, what happened in Virginia, like these are hopeful times, but they only become a moment if we do not connect and become, basically, like create these nodes that continue those connections and then push people to a farther imagination, and that question of what does it mean to live in a world that we want our children and grandchildren to grow up in. um so both, I that's what I think that the big mistake in 2006, and I remember those marches. I was in my 20s, and I got to march with my students, in San Francisco. It was amazing. There were so many of us, and then it sort of like we did not connect the lines. If there's something useful about technology, I'm not good at it, but I got young people in my team who are, so they're they're doing stuff. It's like we gotta capture the connections. We gotta imagine what's tomorrow, and how do we continue these connections, so that is not just a reaction. So, like, let's say in 3 more years, God willing, the administration changes, and like Democrats win, then everybody goes back to sleep. That's not useful. It's the injustice continues to happen. Gentrification, and from the mission, you see it all the time. You see it all over the place. You see it in San Mateo County, and people, oh, well, everything is fine now. It hasn't been fine. So this is, in a way, is a way for us to live into what does it look like when things aren't fine, for us to be part of continuing to live into that utopia and work towards something. So yeah, that's, I think, my best estimation, that as we're building, we need to build for the future, not just reaction, but make it become a response. And it's about time.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I think some of the things that you're lifting up right now are really important for us to hear, right? Is that both Bill and you are lifting up that there is utility in these big protests. There is a purpose for it, and yet it is still not enough. And so how do we stay connected and organized after the protest so that it's not reactionary, but so that it's responsive and continues to build on the work that's already happening on the ground? It makes me think about why so many of us as organizers are really tired, because we need more support and need more comrades to continue this work, and that direct action that's happening on a day to day. But I'm also thinking about, I was fortunate enough to learn from Dr. Angela Davis, and I remember her saying, I may not see liberation in my lifetime, but I'm still responsible for working towards it in this lifetime. And so I'm hearing that as a thread, with what you all are sharing. So, Bill, what do you think this moment illuminates for us about the need and possibility of a future without borders, and what can it look like in practice?
Well, to me, it's about human dignity. Um, I, the thing that, there's so many things about what's happening today that's disturbing, but one thing that stands out to me is how ICE is treating, and it's not just ICE. ICE is a manifestation of what the White House wants, right? And so, um, it's how human beings are treated, uh, like animals, and it's easy to, it's too easy, but maybe it's a good thing. All you have to do is Google, and you can, or go online, and you can see all these different ICE arrests have been taking place recently. Um, and people being thrown down to the ground, wrestled, uh, the ICE ignoring people who are saying, "Hey, where's your warrant?" and just being treated without any dignity. And um, it's that's just recent, and but it's gone on for a long time. I mean, you can think of any administration. Just exactly 4 years ago, in September 4 years ago, as I recall, that was the image under the Biden administration of Haitians at Del Rio, Texas, being whipped back by ICE agents on horses. Um, are you kidding me? That's how we treat people. Um, I remember under the George Bush administration, I'll never forget this article and this image. There was a raid on a poultry farm in Georgia, and ICE came in, and people ran all over the place, and people ran into the mountains and the forests, and there was this old white guy who had lived at the trailer park for almost all his life, and a New York Times reporter interviewed him because this old white man was sitting there with a upside down flag in the front of his trailer. And the New York Times reporter interviewed him and said, "Why do you have the flag here upside down?" And he said, "Well, I just saw what happened." And he said, "I don't know anything about immigrant rights, but you don't treat human beings like that." And so that's what, yes, I'm asking for no borders, okay? But I'm asking for no borders because I'm asking that people be treated with dignity. Uh, and that just is not happening right now. And that is the most disturbing manifestation of the so-called new immigration enforcement policy that I'm seeing and experiencing. And so,
I
and
appreciate you lifting
yeah.
that up too, Bill, because I do think, one of the things that I think you're highlighting is like, people don't have to be formally academically educated to understand that, the loss of dignity of folks is on the line, and the repercussions and implications of what that means to be an American while that's currently happening. And so, what does it look like for us to build bridges with those folks, even if they may not look like us, sound like us, be in our communities in the same ways, and be educated in the ways that we are? So, I really appreciate you lifting that up. I do know we have some questions from the audience. Many questions have been percolating. Yes, I did use that word. So, I'm going to pass it on over to Belinda. If you can share a few questions, I think we have maybe about 10 minutes before we close out.
Yeah, and thank you, Bill and Lorena. Just so much of what you're saying is speaking to our heart. And there's a lot of I just want to acknowledge there's a lot of pain too in this moment that we're holding. But together collectively, I want to say thanks to everyone for being here, to witness and be and dream together. But one of the things I am sharing about this time that I think I want to call on more, is to really think about the mental health and the physical health impact this is having. So while we're calling it, it's an immigration crisis, I'm trying to call it out as a public health crisis, really saying like this is a much bigger than politics and immigration. This is public health. It's making us sick. It's making children ill, families ill, elders ill, the mental health impact. So as we, get prepared in answering the first question that I wanted to ask was, with everything we're seeing, how do you think we can be doing more to educate, shifting also or adding in this narrative of this public health crisis, the mental health? Um, you know, it's beyond a crisis. It's a devastation of what we're seeing. So I don't know, Lorena, do you want to tackle that? Like how we're talking about that? Or we can kind of eliminate that more.
Yeah. I mean, I have the privilege to work with a lot of teachers. And like I said, a lot of the teachers are actually doing the accompaniment to court, but also they are in the classrooms and they're seeing the impact it's having on the kids. And we have to, we locally and everywhere, to start shifting, just saying this, like you're saying, like, or, just an issue thing, like it's about immigrants. It's actually about w- what is it like for children to go to their classroom and then one of their classmates is not there because their whole family was taken. It takes a toll, and teachers are aware of it. They're also seeing people missing schools because of rumors, then, or somebody's dad just got detained. In like Bill said, it's not just happening in the court. Last week in Daly City, we had, three people picked up from their house, and one of the people was the dad of a son who missed school for 2 days. I wonder, like, what is that day when he goes back? How does he show up as a freshman in high school to a situation like this? And the so I think it's like for all of us to start talking about the fact that this is hurting us, and not just, I mean, first we call in the problem, but then like what are the solutions? Even in our organizing, to be in constant war mode or reaction mode is important,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
how do we integrate healing, like deeper healing that can happen in the middle of a battle, right? Like we saw it
Yeah.
in South Africa, like people, how they marched, they sang, they supported one another. Native people have been doing it forever. But like, how do we become more aware of that, especially for people who are at risk? Um, it keeps you up at night. Your dreams are made out of that, and that's just a reality. But like, how do from there we also rise into healing practices that we have had forever into our organized. It needs to be weaved next to it. It cannot be something that happens in a retreat or whatever with people with the privilege to do it, but it needs to be in our spaces. if that's faith practices, if that's art, if that's singing, if that's music. And Bill said this in Half Moon Bay a while back in a presentation. He said that in the midst of all this, joy is also an act of resistance. So, like, how do we, in the midst of this, laugh together, sing together? So, yeah, it's in our hands to talk about it in the right way and call it by its name.
Thank you, Lorena. Thank you so much. And call on other professionals to join with us, in the medical field too. So I appreciate that so much. I'm going to ask you a question, Bill. Do broad metaphorical uses of terms like we are all immigrants, or we all have borders, or we are all illegal in some ways risk unintentionally flattening or relativizing the material realities faced by the 11 million undocumented people in the US? How do we hold nuanced metaphorical understandings of, quote, borders without diluting the specificity of undocumented people's struggles and legal precarity? That's one of our questions in the chat.
Yeah, that's a difficult question because I I don't think one phrase or one vision works with everyone. And I I I I understand the nature the purpose of that question, because I would hope that people understand that we are a nation of immigrants and we should respect people from other parts of the world who are not the same as us. And you can make religious arguments to support that. You can make economic arguments to support that. You can make kind of other social arguments to support that. And so it's important to have conversations with our friends, and let's admit it, some of us should admit it, we should have conversations with some of our relatives too, about these issues, and try to see what works with them and what gels with them. I just don't think that one position or one argument is going to work with folks. I thought that when children, and this is continuing to happen now, children are separated from even their parents at the border, or when families are separated, like Lorena said, families are an individual is arrested at their home in Daly City, but their kids are there, or the spouse is there. There's family separation happening, and I thought that would register with folks, and I think that does make a difference with some individuals. I guess my answer to your question, Belinda, is, and I'd like to hear your response too, because you work so closely with the community. I just and with politicians, okay. The I think you have to sit down and have a conversation and see what strikes someone and go with that. Because I do believe that people are capable of changing their minds, and that there's a whole group of people in the middle that we're in the middle of this, but there's still a whole group of people that haven't felt the impact, and they need to hear it. What do you think, Belinda?
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I think I've been one of the things that I'm really trying to go back to, um like in this context of time, is just how we own this land. And we need to claim that back. And so, we talk about the word immigrant, but really, like, is it more like even indigenous, right? And it is that. But how do we really start to continue to tell the stories of the people? It's their testimonies, it's our testimonies, our stories that really humanize, and then the context of of how um, labels, become what we define people with, but really those labels then kind of melt away when we can humanize and they become the stories of each individual, And so I know it's like you mentioned with politicians and like that's one of the things that I want so much to do is like, can you sit down and see who's across from you? Can you sit down and see who's in front of you? Can you sit down and see this child that's struggling and going to school now because his dad is gone? Like really sit down and have these conversations because I think that's how we kind of hide behind the ability to do, you know, politicians do what they do is because they can sit behind these labels of criminalizing people and labeling. So I think for me, it's really trying to, um, you know, be present with the realities of who we are and who they are and who each is. And then, I'm seeing in the chat about what about the 11 million, that we so long were standing for and fighting for and here and like what's happening to those conversations. I feel like it's like what they talk about. They're bombarding us with so much that we need to pause and really kind of continue to tell those stories of the whole, in individual ways too. So, do I have time for one more question for Ema? Because I love this question. So, the question is your inner AI. Okay, well, it says your AI, and you know what that brings up for us. But then it says, can you speak about what your inner AI, your ancestral intelligence, is saying to you about ancestral wisdom of resistance for these times? When we call on our ancestors, what practices, insights, or forms of resistance do they offer us for these times? Like, what is that ancestral medicine that we have? What would you say, like, kind of a 1 minute to each of you? What are you holding on to? What do you see? Let anyone start? Oh, Bill, go ahead, Bill.
Well, when I hear the word ancestor, I think of my parents, okay? Because I was born when my parents were very elderly. And we grew up in a small town in Arizona that was primarily Mexican American, and it kind of harkens back to the original comments tonight. And the rich people in the town were the white people, okay? And and my father and my mother were allowed to be themselves.
Mm,
And we had a tiny grocery store, and I learned from them that if you respect people, they love you back, you know? And they were so well loved by their customers that were primarily Mexican American, okay? That through their example, and they also got along with the white people, okay? Their
yeah,
English was not very good. My mother could actually speak better Spanish than English. Um, and I just, I guess my response to that question is to try to be yourself, your better self, and hope that people reciprocate, because I've learned through my parents that works.
I love that, Bill. And you're one of the most special human beings I know. So
Come
your
on.
parents like taught you well. Lorena.
I'm a Dr. Bill Hing fan too, for sure.
Exactly.
Um, God, like in terms of our ancestral intelligence, how far do we go? If it is our parents or all of our ancestors, both the colonizer side and the people that had to survive them. Couple of things. One is we must integrate. We must understand that um, the Great Spirit puts the warriors in the time that they need to be in. So this is the time we were brought here for a reason right now. And in order to be able to be who we can be in this time, we need to make time to breathe. Literally, to breathe, to sit, to laugh, to practice our medicine, so that we don't lose our kindness. And like I don't know if the word in English is kindness, but yeah, is our capacity to see the other as a person, even if they don't reciprocate, even if they don't. Because the moment that we see them and us is so easy right now, but that's the bait. That's how we're, and it doesn't mean that we don't fight back, but we cannot become what we don't want to, what we're fighting back, right? So breathing, being in our medicine, making time to practice that, and that's laughter, that's music, that's food, that's family while we have it. And even if we don't have it, is to share time with ourselves, with God, with each other. And that's the way that our people have survived. And well, we're here. We are literally the the dream of our people who died through colonization, through many struggles. They wish they could be having a conversation like this one day, and they're proud of us.
Yes.
So just remembering that even in the hardest time, can we continue to keep our cariño and nurturing of each other, even when it's not reciprocated? If we lose that, we're done.
I love that, Lorena. You're so beautiful. Thank you for reminding us of that. And Bill, and I just want to close this part too with the just reminded what you all were saying. I recently had an opportunity to be with Pope Leo, and one of the things that he said, and I keep sharing it everywhere because it's so beautiful, is that he said, migrants are not a burden, they're messengers of hope. They are messengers of hope. And I saw in one of the questions, it's like, we need to remember to teach migration not as a crisis narrative, but as a story of resistance, dignity, survival, creation, and imagination. And that was a question of like, how do we do that? But I want to hold um, to that question of leaving us, reminding us of what you both are saying is holding that light, that love, that joy, and that we don't want to become the darkness of the opposite, but that we use resistance, power, hope, and love to continue to do this really important work. So, thank you both, Bill and Lorena, and I'm going to turn it over to Farima.
Yes, thank you all for just your words of love and courage. And I want to lift up, right? The question about our ancestral intelligence and just the fact that we are all ancestors in the making. We are all creating legacies now. And so, even being on this call, thinking about this work, thinking about our next steps, thinking about what we're here for, right? Like all of this, one day someone is going to be speaking on us as ancestors. And what does that mean for us? And so, somebody asked this other question. We don't have time to get into this question, but I do want to leave you all with homework as an educator. So, this question is, I think, for all of us on this call to leave this space with. The person who was asking the question says, I work with children who carry intergenerational stories of displacement, courage, grief, and hella love and power. How can we teach migration not as just a crisis narrative, but as a story of resistance, dignity, survival, creation, and imagination? And so I think this is a great question for all of us to really think about. We are all teachers, whether we are in a traditional classroom or in our homes, in our communities, in our friendship circles. How are we having this conversation? How are we centering these stories? How are we continuing to center the dignity and the survival and the creation and imagination of the folks who are under attack and that continue to fight back and resist? And so just lifting up some of the things that you all just said, right? It's like when we think about our faith, we can't just only pray. It's faith in action, right? It's how are we holding not just the duality, but the multiplicity of things that we need in order to move through this moment together, because it's not really a new moment. It's just a repeated part of history that continues to show up for us. And so I'm just really grateful for this conversation. I want to just let folks know that we are so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you to our panelists, Harsha, Walia, even though she was not able to join us physically, but her words still resonated so deeply. Thank you to Bill Hing and Lorena Melgarejo. You know, we're living through a political moment that feels challenging to navigate, to say the least, but hearing from you tonight felt hella healing for the soul. And so I'm going to ask folks to please continue to use our Padlet just to capture some of these takeaways. And it's on purpose that we're giving this Padlet because we hope that you all will use this Padlet to take with you and to share with others. Special thank yous to our See Her team, to Lena Onishi, Dr. Sine Chong, Dr. Damfang Kun, Dr. David Felixson, Dr. Shabnam Koryala Agzad, as well as Ken for your labor of love in this work. Please just remember that the Center for Humanizing Education and Research looks forward to continuing to share space with you all for the upcoming events that we have brewing for 2026. So just keep a lookout for updates and communication from us. If you're not already connected with us, please tap into our various communication channels, whether it be our website, our email list, our social media. And save the date. We are going to have a School of Education See Her conference, and it's all about educational futurities, about remembering, reimagining, and rebuilding from the Bay and beyond. It'll be on Saturday, March 14th, 2026, from 9 to 4 p.m. So thank you all. I'm going to close out with some music, and I just hope that we all continue to take care of ourselves and each other. God bless.
Get them kids about the cages. Get them kids about the cages. Get them kids about the cages. There's kids in the cages. I'm feeling frustrated. People been looking and laughing and pointing. This ain't entertainment. There's kids in the cages. I'm feeling frustrated. People been looking and laughing and pointing. This ain't entertainment. They treat us like animals. This ain't a circus. This isn't laughable. We don't deserve this. This ain't on the media. This ain't on the news. No one believing us. But this is the truth. This is the truth. And then this is reality. This is the truth. And then this is a tragedy. Taking the children away from the family. Why is this happening? It's a catastrophe. Stop with the vanity. Where is humanity? We are the refugees. We are in agony. We've been the ones that been taking your salary. We are the hard workers. We are the farm workers. We are the dishwashers. Yeah, we are the ones. Yeah, we are the ones. Yeah, we are the hard workers. We are the lawnmowers. We are the leaf blowers. Yeah, we are the ones. Yeah, we are the ones. Yeah, we are the ones that are working construction. And we are the ones that will fix your destruction. And we are the ones that bring fruit on your table. And we are the ones that been given a label. And we are the ones that you're blaming for taking your just what you pay me. We are the ones working minimum wages. And we are the ones with our kids in the cages. Get them kids about 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 the cages. There's kids in the cages. I'm feeling frustrated. People been looking and laughing and pointing. This ain't entertainment. There's kids in the cages. I'm feeling frustrated. People been looking and laughing and pointing. This ain't entertainment.
Thank you all so much. Have a good night, and we look forward to continuing to be in community with you all. Bye, y'all.